I have a question.
Okay, recording is
Before
in
we
progress. I managed to find it, which is pretty impressive.
before
So,
we even start, why did they put an AI companion button and
I,
in the toolbar at the bottom, yet hide the reaction? Oh, they've moved the
yes,
reactions again. Okay.
yes. Well, yes, I'm not sure. In any case, the AI companion, I'm not sure what we're supposed to do with the AI companion. I guess if you just feel like you need to have a friend while you're while you're doing this, we can we can hit on the AI companion. I guess I have no idea what an AI companion is. That's because I'm a boomer and I don't know these things.
Well, we could get the AI companion to ask you difficult questions.
That's true. That's
Some
true.
of them, some of them might be relevant and some of them might not be so relevant.
Yeah, that seems to be how it does work. Okay. Unfortunately, Nathan is not with us. So you're stuck with me to read this. I'll read the psalm through before we start. And I'll do the best I can. Uh, מזמור שיר חנוכת הבית לדוד, ארום ממך אדוני כדניתני, ולא שמחת עבדי, אדוני אלוהי שיבתי, אליך תרפאני, אדוני הדית מן שעון נפשי, איתני ביד דיבור, זמרו לאדוני חסידיו, הודו לזכר קודשו, כי רגע באפו חיים, באפו חיים, ברצונו בערב ילין בחיל בוקר אני אמרתי בשלוי, בא לאמוד לעולם, אדוני ברצונך, האמרת, אדוני בנצור והאמרת, הר לי עוז, יסתתר פניך הייתי נבהל, אליך אדוני אקרא, אל אדוני אתחנן, מה ביצע בדמי, בלתי השוחט, היותך יגיד עמיתך, שמע אדוני וחונני, אדוני היה עוזר לי, הפקת משפטי במחול לי, תחת סכין תעזני שמחה, למען יזמך כבוד ולא. לא ידום אדוני אלוהי לעולם עודך. Okay, that's not the most beautiful rendering ever in the history of the world, but nevertheless, we do our best. We do our best. Okay, so we'll start. So one of the most challenging parts of this psalm is actually the colophon in the very beginning, because it seems to have absolutely nothing whatsoever to do with the contents of the poem. So it starts at Mizmor Shir Chanukat Habayit David, a song for the dedication of the temple by David. Well, there's nothing about a dedication of the temple here at all. There's nothing that there's nothing that speaks about the temple. There's nothing that speaks about a house. There's nothing, and the commentators kind of scratch their heads over this. Some say it refers to the first temple. Some say it refers to second temple. Some people say it refers to the third temple that's coming in the future, and that this is a description of all of the trials and troubles of the exile that becomes the third temple. Another is that it's not referring to the temple at all. It says Chanukat Habayit. It's referring to David Amelech's palace. That he sang this before he entered his palace, but again, it doesn't really have any. There's no obvious connection between the theme of entering a home, um, a theme of entering a home, and this psalm. So I'm just going to leave that out there for you because I don't have a solution. I don't have a solution, and none of the commentators have a very nice solution. And so we're just going to leave it out there that that's the title. But the title doesn't have a lot to do with the actual psalm. So it starts out, Aromimcha Adonai ki diritani. It says, I will exalt you, for you have picked me up. It's interesting, this word, um, dilitani, you have picked me up, has actually two meanings that are opposite. So, so Zilitani could mean simultaneously made me poor, made me impoverished, and also to raise someone up. It has almost two opposite meanings. But the meaning here would seem to me, that I exalt you because you picked me up. And my enemies did not rejoice over me. And of course, we know that if we're looking at this from the perspective of David HaMelech, of King David, as being the author, so to speak, of the Psalms, it makes sense given that he faced many enemies, including his father-in-law Shaul and so forth. But again, I'll come back to this later. I don't think that we necessarily have to tie these poems to the historical experience of David HaMelech. He's not writing them for himself. He's writing them for us, right? And of course, we've all had that experience. We've all had that experience of you know having enemies, whether they're spiritual enemies or they're material enemies, or a combination of both, and feeling a sense of joy and relief that our enemies aren't able to gloat over us and to be happy at our downfall. It says, Adonai Elohai Shivati Alecha. He says, God, I cried out to you. I cried out to you, v'tirpa'eni. And it says here, you forgave me, but literally it's you healed me, which I think is important. It's not just that you made me feel better. It's not just that you forgave me. It's that you put me back together. That when we are sad and we're scared, right? There's a kind of brokenness to that. And so I cried out to you, my God, and you forgave me, but really it's tirpeini. You healed me. Adonai helita min shon nafshi. And it says, and you raised my soul from the pit. Raised my soul from the pit. And that's the experience I think many of us have had of what it means, to be in the pit, right? To feel like your soul has sunk down into some kind of very sad place. And chitani, and he says, and you sustained me with life, miyar dibor, right? You sustained me with life, and you raised me up so I didn't fall down into the depths. There's a time when we fall, and we don't manage not to hit rock bottom, right? When we manage to when God pulls us out of the spin, right? We're spinning down into the hole, but catches us before we hit bottom. And that's the experience he's talking about. He's talking about here that even though I had gone into the pit, the difference between Sheol and the Vor, I'm not exactly sure, but Vor is also means like an absolute emptiness, right? It's a depths which is absolutely empty, has nothing to it, is completely devoid of anything. So it's almost like an existential depression of that kind of nihilistic nothingness. Zamru Adonai Chasidav, devoted ones, the Chasidav, the those who are pious, the devoted ones, Zamru Adonai, they sing to God, and they give thanks. They give thanks to the memory, to his literally to his holy memory, to his zecher, for my Muslim friends, related to the word zikr, right? Dhikr, to his holy memory, to his recall, right? By singing, by singing, people who are, and now he's also talking about himself, because really what he's doing in this psalm is he's singing, right? This is a song. And so he sings and he says, your devoted ones, they sing out to you, okay? And they praise the memory, your holy memory, right? That memory here doesn't just mean memory as like, we remember something that happened in the past, but the constant awareness of something, right? When we remember something, it's not as if it's something in the past that just kind of comes to us in the presence, but something which stays with us in the present. Where it's now part of us. I don't know if you ever had the experience, I think this happens with smells a lot. Right? You walk into somewhere and you smell something which is very familiar, right? And it transports you into that place that you were before. So that's the kind of memory that talking about here. So give thanks to his holy memory, right? To that experience of his presence. Ki regabi apo chayim b'rtzono, says his anger lasts only a moment, while kindness chayim b'rtzono, well life goes according. Well, it's difficult to translate because he translated like this. He says, for his anger lasts only a moment. That makes perfect sense. And he says, while his kindness is for life. That's one way of reading it. Another way of reading it is Chaim Birtono, is life is according to his will. Life is according to his will. So on the one hand, right, there are these moments when we feel when we feel this moment that God is angry. But the very fact that we're still alive indicates that we're still, ratzon is will, but it's also desire. It means that he wants us here, right? So on the one hand, we can say, well, God is angry with us, right? And we can feel sometimes that God is not all right with us for that one moment. For that one moment, we feel that God's not all right with us, but the very fact that we're here, but still, the very fact that we're alive is according to his will. So both of those things are true at the same time. But it says in the evening, you can go to sleep. You can go to sleep with tears. And in the morning you rejoice. And this is the nature of life. There's moments when we feel like God is angry with us, and yet he's keeping us alive, and we go to sleep and we cry into our pillow, but we wake up to joy. We wake up to a different world, right? So those ups and downs are part of what it means to be alive, right? To be alive. So Ani Amarti b'shalvi says, I said in my composure, and by the way, it translates in my tranquility. In a moment of tranquility, when I felt okay, I said, Bal emot olam, says I would never stumble, or literally I would never be moved. And this is the rabbis have a lot of fun with this one. Because okay, wait a second, like when is he saying this? What's he referring to? Is he referring to something in his own life? Right? Is he referring to something in his own life? And well, it could be that when he was confronted by the prophet Natan, maybe that's when he said this. Or even weirder, Rashi quotes a midrash that says this actually is about the story of Esther. This is about the story of Esther, and this was Haman who said this, right? It was a famous villain who said this, and the Ibn Ezra does a very nice job. The Ibn Ezra says, no, 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 no. He says, this is human experience. When we think everything is okay, we figure it's never going to change. Right? When we are on top of the world, we figure we're always going to be on top of the world. And so he says it's very simple. I said when I was in times of tranquility, I said, says it's never going to change. It's always going to be like this. It's always going to be like this. It's always going to be just peachy. It's always going to be peachy. It says, hold on, somebody's typing, so I have to mute you. Okay. Says, so in my composure, I said I would never stumble, wouldn't move. So Adonai b'rtzoncha emrata hari oz. He says, but God, it was your will that made me stand strong. And when you hid your face, I was terrified. It says, the reality is, right? The reality is that I thought that I would always be staying on top, right? In that moment when everything is okay, when you feel okay, you think, okay, it's always going to be okay, but it's not the way it is. There are times when by your will you make me stand strong, and there are other times when you hide your face and I'm terrified. There are other times when I suddenly feel like I'm alone in the world and that you're not with me. And I get and I get and I get scared, right? And I get scared. And those are two completely different experiences. So it's not like we fantasize. It's not we may fantasize that yes, and that everything is going to be okay, but really it's not. It has its ups and downs. And this idea of Hester Panim, of God hiding his face, it doesn't mean that God doesn't love us anymore. It doesn't mean that God doesn't care about us anymore. It doesn't mean that God is not present in the world anymore. It means that he's not visible to us in that moment. So Elecha Adonai Ekra, I called out to you, God. Ve'elo Adonai Chanan, and I says, and I supplicated, I begged for your favor. It's a nice translation. I begged for favor, I supplicated. Hold on, I'm gonna look at this comment here. I noticed translators working with the assumptions. Opposites were intended. Tears at night, joy in the morning, anger for a moment, versus for life. Right, and I think that's a good reading of the poem, that there are all these opposites, right? And this thing about Bishalvi is you think in that moment of serenity and tranquility that everything is going to be smooth sailing, but that's not the nature of it. The nature is that there's the moments when God is angry at you, and there's the moment that God raises you up. There's a moment when you feel exalted, another moment when he's hiding his face from you. There's a moment when you're crying, and there's a moment when you're happy. And
Yeah, well,
that
what I found so interesting and which raised such questions in me is that the translator went for the translation of kindness as a natural antonym to anger. But ratzono, if it's linked to the idea of will, then doesn't it see anger in a different light? It sees anger as a loss of control. How am I supposed to understand the notion of anger if ratzono is going to be the opposite of it?
Yeah, that's an interesting point. But I think ratzon also means like an et ratzon means like a moment not of kindness, but of favor, of somebody being in favor, if that makes any sense. So my life is according to his favor. So in one moment, God can be angry at me, right? God be angry at me, but in the other moment, I'm existing by his favor. I'm in his favor, so to speak. So it's not exactly kindness. It's not exactly kindness. That's my best guess. Okay. So now the next part is really beautiful. I begged you. He says, and what was the words of my begging? Ma betzabdami. He says, what's the benefit in my blood? What's the benefit in my death? If I go down into the abyss, it says, does the dust thank you or proclaim your truth? Really saying, yeah, I'm much better. I'm much better for you in this world than dead. It's a very deep argument. It's a very deep discussion to have with God, to say, listen, I'm worth more to you alive than dead. You know, if I'm in this world, I can praise you. If I'm in this world, I can do your work. If I'm in this world, I can serve you. And if I'm not in this world, what can I do for you? Right? What can I do for you not in the world? So therefore he says, and my job is in order to proclaim your truth, right? He says, does the dust thank you or proclaim your truth? I'm just going to go down into the earth and I'm going to become dust. My body is going to become dust. And once I'm dust, right, my ability to praise you, my ability to serve you depends on my having this physical body, right? I'm having this physical body, being able to do that in this world. That has to be done in this world. Whatever happens after this world is an entirely different matter. But my serving you happens in this world, and without this body, I can't do it. So the dust is not going to be able to praise you, and the dust is not going to be able to tell the truth about you. So therefore, Shema Adonai v'chaneni. Therefore, please God, listen to me and be gracious to me. V'chaneni, be gracious, means to be gracious to me, even if I don't deserve it. Right? Very often we see again and again he says this. Right? Again and again he says this. Every once in a while, interesting. Every once in a while, no problem, Maimuna. Go step aside for prayer, and please keep us in mind in your dua, please. So he says. So he very often says, you know, you might think he says about himself, Chasid ani, I'm a pious person. He says about himself very, exalted things sometimes, but at the same time, he also says, Chaneni, please be gracious to me, even though I don't deserve it. Adonai Haye Ozeli, please God be my help. Hafachta mismidi mocholi. He says, you turned my mourning into dancing. Patachta saki, you undid my sackcloth, right? So wearing sak, which was wearing rough clothing, right? Wearing rough clothing was a sign of mourning. Wearing rough clothing was a sign of mourning, and so people would wear this sackcloth, which was made of. I forget what it was made of. Harry,
Burlap.
help me.
Burlap. It's burlap.
It's burlap? Okay, maybe it's burlap. I thought it was wool or something like that.
I think it's goat hair. But I'm not
Goat
sure.
hair, goat hair. I remember somebody told me something, yeah. So in case it was made, it's very uncomfortable, right? And so he says, turned my mourning into dancing, undid my sackcloth, says Tazrani Simcha, and Tazrani Simcha, and you gave me strength and happiness. Right? You gave me, it's hard to translate, Tazrani, you strengthened me in happiness, you strengthened my happiness. Right? So it says again the opposites in this turnaround, right? He says, you've done this before, right? You've taken me from a state of mourning when I was going down into the pit, and you've brought me out. And when I was wrapped in sackcloth and I was in a state of mourning, of course I went in as I was dancing, you undid my sackcloth and you gave me joy. Lamad yezemecha kavod v'lo yidom, Adonai Elohai le'olam odeka. It says my soul. It says my kavod. It's a beautiful expression. Literally, my honor will sing out to you. Okay, so the word kavod here, the word kavod, the Ibn Ezra says something nice about this. It says this refers to the spiritual soul, to the soul of the person who understands God. It says, why is it called kavod? Why is it called honor? It says because it's something that so few people have. Right? It's something which is special. It's rare. Okay? So it says this rare soul that I have will sing for you and will not be silenced. Lo yidom. So yidom, there are two different kinds of silences. So there's shtika, right? Which means just to stop talking. Right? Means to stop talking. It just means a temporary cessation of a temporary cessation of sound. That's shtika. But yidom is a much more deep silence, right? Meaning that it's coming out of it's like coming out of the depth of me, and it's not going to stop. It's not just that it's sound coming out, but that it's overflowing from me. It says, Adonai Elohai le'olam odeka. He says, I will give thanks to you, my God, forever. Le'olam, right? Forever I will give thanks to you. And that's how the psalm ends. So what thoughts do we have?
I'm confused.
Okay, that's a good start.
And where I'm confused is with verse 10, I guess. What benefit is there from my death, from my descent to the abyss? Does the dust thank you or proclaim your truth?
Right.
And the way I would normally think about the dust or nature or creation is it bears witness to the creative impulse of the divine. And it doesn't have to thank the maker. It's an expression of the maker. It's an extension of the creator. And why does David set up this comparison between himself and the dust? The creator doesn't need praise. We need to praise the creator in order to remember the greatness of the creator and the smallness of ourselves.
Right. Well, I think when he says, is there a benefit from my death and from my descent to the abyss, he means here shachad, into the grave, right? Is there a benefit in my going into the grave where I'm going to eventually turn into dust, right? I'm going to be, consumed by the bacteria and reduced to whatever, to my chemical components and, and so forth. So I think that's what he's talking about. He's saying that there's something that as a human being, as I am now, there are things that I can do that I will never be able to do once I'm kind of reduced, once I'm reduced to, decomposed, once I'm decomposed. But it's a powerful thing to say to God, I think, like I'm worth more to you alive than dead,
My first impulse was it's a little chutzpahdik, to say something like that. And
Yeah,
it's a line that has troubled me, whenever I've read the the Psalms?
Yeah, well, I think part of it is, we have to to think that human beings, we have this kind of unique, because we have this kavod, we have this seichel, we have this special divine soul, um, this special divine soul that, we can uh we can do things that others can't do. I see Ashley wrote in the comments, it feels like an expression of David's despair and pain, and yes, it is. I mean, that moment when if you have to say to someone, I'm worth more to you alive than dead, that is a very desperate moment, right? It's a very, very desperate moment. And when it says, it says, Elecha Adonai Ekra, I called out to you. Ekra always refers to somebody who's far away, always somebody who's far away, right? So he's calling over the great abyss between the finite and the infinite, right? There are times when we feel like God is very close to us, right? And we can just talk to God. But when we have to call to God, that means that we're talking, as we feel at that moment that God is far away. And then when it says Et Hanan, right? That really means to supplicate, to beg, right? So there's a lot of pain. There's a lot of pain in this. Yes, that's a nice way of reading it. Yes, there's a lot of pain. Yeah. Well, I think, says in the chat, this is, I've always used to feel that the ability to call out to God is an act of God's mercy himself, but when we are close to God, when we need God. And I think that's very true. And I think one of the things that comes across here, is that at the same time, like that he sometimes feels like, I mean, you definitely get the experience of the poet here, right? Colin David, that he very often feels like God is close, and very often he feels like God is not so close, because he says here, he starts up and says, you hit your face and I was terrified. There's a panic here, when he doesn't feel that God is close. He's used to God feeling close to him, but in those moments when he doesn't feel God close to him, he panics. And it's very difficult. Doesn't most use an argument like this well, yeah, he does. Yes, he does. Right. Yeah, when, at a point when God seems to be pretty much done with the children of Israel, right? Because they've, he does say, like, wait a second, so who's gonna glorify you in this world if these people are not here? I think, yes, you're right. I think he does use that kind of an argument, right? It's like, if you let these people die in the desert, then who's gonna praise you, right? Who's going to be your kind of who's going to be your cheerleaders in the world? So my phone is blowing up. I don't know why that's happening. Hopefully only for good. More thoughts? Okay. I'm not going to start a new one today because I feel like this was a heavy one. I don't mean to move so slow, but it's just kind of the way it seems to work out. So more thoughts, comments? Okay. Anybody has comments or thoughts, you know how to find me. Please feel free to contact me. Of course, we also have the WhatsApp group and so forth. See, now Anushka, she comes and she says something. Hold on, what did she say here? Didn't he say the world will know that Hashem doesn't exist, or that he's vengeful because he took the entire nation out of the comfort to the desert to kill? Yes, that's what he said. He said, it's like, You really want to take them out of the desert and then go kill them. Yes, he also said that. Yep, he did say that. Okay. Everybody should have a beautiful week, if it is a week. And if I see you on Wednesday, that's even better. And I'm glad that Benson, is he gone already? Okay, well, I hope I'm glad to see that he's feeling better. Oh no, there he is. Okay, glad to see that Benson's feeling better. Hope everybody is feeling better, and Jacques is feeling better, and everybody should be feeling better, and the world should only be peaceful and happy and good for everybody. And Be'ezrat Hashem, we will have a good week or a good 2 days, depending upon how long it takes for me to see you. And thank you for coming. Thank you for being so much a part of the solution and not just part of the problem like the rest of us. And really appreciate it. So I love you and bye.